Hello, I'm Adam J. Morgan and welcome to Late Night Ghost Stories. Today I have a very special guest talking to John West. He's a film producer, actor, broadcaster and author of several books on history, crime and a subject we are all very fascinated by, ghosts and folklore. So John, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm glad to be a part of it.
I suppose I'll get straight in there and say, do you believe in ghosts?
I do. There's more to it than people claim. I've had experiences myself. I lived in a haunted property in a place called Saxmundham in Suffolk, and when I moved in there, things got moved. There was knocks, and the duvet got pulled off my bed, and I glimpsed a figure out the corner of my eye. So I believe in them, and I've spoken to too many people that have seen things that they can't explain, including relatives that have died. People that have seen ghosts in a haunted property didn't know one another, and yet they've described exactly the same ghost, even though they had no connection. So there's something going on there, definitely. Yes, I am a believer.
What exactly got you've mentioned obviously that you lived in a haunted property, but was it before that? What actually got you into the world of ghosts? Was it from childhood or was it later in life?
It was as a child. It all started with me late mother. She fueled my interest. She had loads of paperback books on ghosts, including some by a chap called Elliot O'Donnell. He was an Anglo-Irish writer who wrote books on ghosts over a period, I think, about like 40, 50 years. And I used to look at the covers, and you had all these sort of ruined castles and wispy figures of haunted mansions and nuns, ghostly nuns drifting across a churchyard, and it hooked me. And I used to read them when she wasn't around, because you probably would have got annoyed and said, "Oh, you're going to give yourself nightmares," and occasionally I did. And my dad bought me the Osborne Book of the Unexplained as a child as well, with these fantastic illustrations of ghosts, and you had stuff on there about Black Shuck, the Phantom Hellhound. And he then got me some books by Peter Underwood, another great author who wrote books on haunted London. Oh, you name it, he did it. And I was just hooked from an early age. And the interest and love of ghost stories has never left me.
Well, you mentioned sort of reading books as a child, and it reminds me of when I used to go to my local library, and there was a book in particular, and it had it was a legendary picture of the shrouded figure, which was a photograph, I believe, from 1963. And it was the Reverend who had taken a picture to show off how beautiful his altar looked. You obviously know the picture I'm referring to.
I do. It was actually the Osborne Book of the Unexplained. It was in there, and it really scared me as a kid. There's a church in Yorkshire, I think it's Newbury, and there was no one in the church at the time. No connections of any ghost stories or anything like that. And he just took the picture, and when the print was developed, there was this figure wearing a black robe with some sort of cloth covering its face, standing on the steps, and it was see-through. And he couldn't believe it, and he had it examined, and they said this hasn't been tampered with or anything like that. I mean, I've looked into it. There's no other ghost stories connected with that church. No one's ever seen this figure since. No one's ever taken any photographs of it. It was built, the church, to commemorate this lad. I think it was his mum raised the money to build it. He'd been kidnapped and murdered. I think it was in Greece, or somewhere around there anyway. But I mean, obviously, it couldn't have been him. My theory is that because it was wearing like a cloth over his face, what was it, a leper? And perhaps there was a building on the site of that church, or it just drifted in there because it was connected, it sort of was attracted to the fact it was a religious building. I don't know, but it was covering its face for some reason. I just think it was someone who had leprosy. And because they used to cover their faces, because obviously, with leprosy, what can happen to someone's body? That's my theory. I can't prove it, but it's interesting. There was no ghost stories connected with it, and obviously it was a relatively modern building as well.
So you believe it's a genuine ghost photo?
I do, because the print was examined. There was nothing wrong with it, and why would the vicar lie? I mean, all he would have done is sort of brought ridicule on himself. So I believe it is a genuine. I can't explain what it is, why it appeared or anything like that, and it was literally a one-off. I
Yeah,
mean, as I
that's
said,
what I
I've
was going
looked
to
into
ask
it.
you actually. Has anyone ever gone back to the same church and tried to recreate that picture and take picture and see if they've caught anything themselves?
Again, they have, but they've never caught anything. I mean, I've spoken to people who've been in that area and visited the church, and they felt nothing, took photographs, praying that it's going to cut. Because obviously, digital cameras now, you'll see it instantly. You don't have to go to Boots to get it developed, as he probably did. And there's nothing, absolutely nothing. It was literally a one-off ghost appearance, shall we say. But the fact his face was covered, it's really spooky. I should point out, some people have claimed, it's a really tall figure, like 6-7 feet, because they measured it apparently against the back of the wall and stuff. But actually, if you look, the figure's standing on the steps, which would give it the appearance of a greater height, and as part of the robes are draped over the steps. So I don't think it's as tall as people claim, but it is a weird looking ghost, and quite frightening actually. It did scare me as a kid.
Yeah, exactly. It stands, and I can still see it now, just talking about it. And I remember thinking, very phantom-like, and like almost like a skull that was melting, kind of dripping.
Mm.
Really, really odd. And I
Yeah,
remember,
well, when you zoom in on it, if you examine it closely, it is like something covering the face with like eye holes. Although I have seen some prints of it which are perhaps not as high resolution, and it knows it does come across as like a skull. But if you get a good high resolution image of it, it does look like cloth covering this figure's face. But the thing is, the figure's looking right at the camera as well, so it's like posing, which I know people skeptics are going to say, well, that proves it was faked. But I don't know, perhaps the ghost just wanted his photo taken, who knows?
I mean, talking about that, what do you believe? And I'm not expecting you to have all the answers, but what do you believe a ghost is? What are we really seeing? Is it a manifestation of someone in the afterlife? Is it a replay? The stone tape theory. What's your thoughts on that?
I think there's various explanations. I wouldn't like to say, right, all ghosts are souls of the dead. I believe some are souls of the dead that haven't been able to move on, or they've come back for some reason, or they're frightened to move on. I believe others are literally recordings. You mentioned the stone tape theory. I mean, there was a famous case in the Treasurer's house in York where a chap saw Roman soldiers. I believe that was a recording. For some reason, their emotions are imprinted into the fabric of a building, or perhaps even the soil, and they're replayed back like a Blu-ray player, whether the person tunes into it or it's the right atmosphere. I believe some are fake. Some people make things up. I mean, near where I live, there was a church called Westleton, we're still there, and it's supposedly haunted by the devil. And it turns out it's just made up by smugglers. They wanted to keep people away from the church at night because the vicar was letting them store contraband in the crypt. Others literally could be time slips where they're not ghosts. It's their time has briefly interacted with ours. And perhaps to them, we're the ghosts. So there's different explanations, definitely. But even with the stone tape theory, there's other theories. I think it was Lethbridge who did a book, I think it was Ghosts and Ghouls, and he felt that the recordings were linked to water, that it was a magnetic field connected with water, and that would record it, or you'd get that feeling and the sort of emotions, and then perhaps see an image because of that. So I think there's different explanations, but some are definitely faked. I mean, and also you might see something and assume it's a ghost. I'll give you a classic example. I was driving my car down a country lane late one night, and I saw in the headlights what looked like a figure standing at the side of the road, and it looked like sort of luminous. And if I panicked and turned the car around and gone the other way, that would have been that there was a ghostly figure seen down there, and it becomes part of the local folklore. But I was brave and carried on, and it was just like a large bin bag had been caught in a tree, and it caught the headlights. But from a certain angle in the distance, it looked like this black figure, almost like a monk. So you can sometimes see things and they're not what you think they are, but there's definitely different explanations to ghosts, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with you as well on that one. Some places we've gone to investigate, there's so much history to it. People are saying all these kind of things happen. It's the most haunted place you'll ever go to, and nothing happens. And then we've gone to other places, and you can't find anything on the research, and you're thinking, oh, this is going to be a really flat night. We're not going to get anything, and it's actually been really active. So you can never tell. I mean, what would you class as the most haunted place you've ever been to yourself?
I would say the Tower of London,
Oh
because
wow,
there's,
what
yeah,
an
there's so.
amazing.
I mean, I've never done an investigation there. I've never got permission, but I've been there a few times. I first went as a kid, so I was fascinated by the history anyway. You know, these executions, and they've got one of the blocks there, the axes and things, but it's literally full of ghosts. I mean, you've had sightings of Anne Boleyn. Um, Guy Fawkes was tortured there. His ghost has been heard. I don't know why they assume it's him crying out, because loads of people were tortured there. But there was a famous case of in the Victorian period, there was a light seen in the church of St. Peter, and the chap got a ladder to look inside, and he saw a possession of Tudor people, and he recognised the woman at the front as Anne Boleyn from portraits. In the 70s, some soldiers heard shrieks at night and screams coming from Tower Green. They searched everywhere, couldn't find anyone. There's a fear it was a Countess of Salisbury who fell foul of Henry VIII, and she refused to meekly submit her head to the axe, and was chased around the block by the executioner. And a chap saw a ghostly bear, and I know people say a bear in the Tower of London, but it was a zoo at one point. It was like a royal zoo. He lunged at it, and his bayonet went through the thing, and he fainted. So yeah, Walter Raleigh is supposed to haunt the battlements. Obviously, you got the princes in the tower; they're supposed to haunt it. The most famous one was I think it was 1817, the old Jewel House, which is still there. You can go in there. I mean, I've experienced nothing in there, but the keeper of the jewels at that time actually witnessed probably one of the weirdest ghosts in the history of the paranormal. It was like a giant glass cylinder filled with this sort of milky liquid constantly swirling around, and it went behind the people they were having their dinner at the time. It went around the back of the table, and his wife cried out. It seized her, and he picked up this stool or chair, threw it at this thing, and it vanished. I mean, someone said to me, well, do you think that could be a time-traveling probe from the future? Because it does seem a bit weird, but who knows? But again, that was just a one-off. But it's so weird, he wouldn't have made that up, and other people saw it. But what was it? Like a glass cylinder filled with, like, milky liquid? Weird. But, yeah, so I would say the Tower of London is probably the most haunted location or place. But I'd say probably the most haunted city. London would disagree. It'd probably be York, because... you've got so many ghost stories there, haunted churches. You've got the Roman soldiers in the Treasurer's house, the Minster's haunted, York Castle Museum's haunted, the Railway Museum has got ghosts. I mean, if you're going to see a ghost, you'll probably see it in York. I mean, I must admit, I've never seen a ghost in York, but there you go, I've been unlucky, obviously.
Wow. And you've written several books as well, haven't you, that have come out quite recently, really? Was it 2019 was your first one?
Yes, that was Britain's Haunted Heritage, and that came about because I write for Psychic News magazine. I do ghost stories from it, normally every month. I've been writing for about 10 years now, believe it or not. And I decided to, basically do a book on ghosts. So I put together some of my favourite ghost stories. The Tower of London's in there. I wrote about the Hexham heads, those Celtic heads that were found in Northumberland and connected with ghostly werewolves and things like that. The Treasurer's house is in there, the Grey Man of Ben Mahui, that figure that's been seen on that Scottish Mountain. I wrote about William Corder, the Red Barn murder in his skull. And I just basically picked out the ones that had fascinated me most as a child, and I thought I'd do my own version of the stories, and get it out there. And it was well received. Obviously, we went into lockdown, which probably didn't help some promotion and that. But yeah, I was quite chuffed when I first got a copy of it, through the post. And Uri Geller did the forward. The introduction for it, the famous psychic, and my friend and colleague Jason Figgis did a forward as well, and he does all the covers for my books as well.
Oh, amazing. And how long does it sort of take to research all that and put that together from from original concept, the ideas, and to actually coming out in a shop? We're talking months or years?
Probably a year. Some of them were sort of revised versions of articles that I'd originally done for Psychic News. But from beginning to end, sort of revising it, adding information, picking out pictures, getting Jason to do the cover and things like that, getting Uri to do the intro. Yeah, I would say probably about a year from beginning to end.
Do you want to do a bit of shameless plug, and then can you give me the titles so the listeners can you buy them on Amazon and places like that?
Oh yeah, well they're all available on Amazon, also from the publisher JMD Media. The first one's Britain's Haunted Heritage. and that was published in 2019. The second one is Britain's Ghostly Heritage. That was published in 2022. And Stuart Evans, the Jack the Ripper expert, who's also very interested in ghosts, did the intro for that, and Jason did the forward again. And the last one came out Halloween of last year, and that's called Britain's Haunted Land. And Jason did the intro for that.
Oh, fantastic.
And he did a wonderful cover. Actually, the last one's my favourite cover of all the ones he's designed. It's like the Green Man.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can get them from Amazon, JMD Media, and Waterstone stock them. If you live in London, you can go into Foyles. They stock it. So yeah, so it's out and about. Or if you just want to order it from the library, I'm sure they'll get you a copy.
I will be definitely. I'm not just saying this. I will be buying them because I love my paranormal books. You mentioned Peter Underwood earlier, and I've got a lot of his books as well. He
was a wonderful author. I've got every single ghost book he ever published, and some of them are signed as well. I never met him, but I managed to get some signed copies, and he was definitely one of the ones, as I said earlier, who fueled my interest in ghosts. The first book I ever got of his was Haunted London. My dad bought it in St Albans Market from a second-hand bookstall, and I've still got that original copy. So thanks to my dad as well for helping buy these books. So my dad also helped fuel my interest. But Peter Underwood was a wonderful author. Stuart P. Evans knew him, the chap who did the intro on my second ghost book. He said he was a lovely man, and did so many interesting books on every aspect of the paranormal, especially Borley as well. I think he did a couple of books on Borley, or was it 3? And if you're interested in Borley, you need to at least buy Peter Underwood's book on it. I think it's been reprinted as well. A lot of his books have been reprinted by his son. So, which is great, because at one point they'd all sort of gone out of print and were fetching stupid prices.
A lot of mine are from like charity shops and eBay and things, and they're the old hardback ones before the internet come out and before night vision reality TV. Not that I'm knocking that, I love all that stuff anyway, but when you couldn't research something, so you would read a story and see a picture that would make the hairs on your arms stand up, going back to the shrouded figure, and there was no way you could go on Wikipedia to find out some more information. You were just like, wow, that's fascinating. And I remember showing my friends who lived in the same street as me, and wow, and we all, shall we steal the book? Which obviously we didn't. I'll put that out there, we didn't. But I would go back to the library and take that book out, or sometimes I remember being in like the library's research room and going through all the paranormal books. It just, like you, just fascinated me. I think it's the unknown, and you mentioned Jack the Ripper as well. And I think that
we all love a mystery. I mean, I've written about Jack the Ripper's ghosts in the second book, and the first one as well. I write about Robert Lees, the medium who supposedly tracked down Jack the Ripper, though I'm a bit sceptical about that. But all the murder sites are supposedly haunted. But yeah, I mean, we all love a mystery, don't we?
And I think that's why, that's exactly me. I remember about 25 years ago, I was in a shop in Weston-super-Mare, and there was a book, and it jumped out the shelf at me, called The Diary of Jack the Ripper. All about James Maybrick and all that. And I didn't really know too much about Jack the Ripper at the time, but I bought it and I read it cover to cover that same night. I thought, this is amazing. They finally solved it. But then I realised a book came out like a couple of years after that, where the guy, I can't remember his name now, he claimed he had made it up, and then he would change his story to the press and say, oh, no, he didn't. It was his wife that scripted the diary. And they had experts looking at the ink and the age of the paper. And they said, well, it's not actually a diary. It's like I think it was like a photo album that he had cut. He had cut the pages out. But even to this day, I still think, well, why would you go to that trouble? Would you have, so I'm still, I don't know what your thoughts are on the diary, but I'm still sort of, I can't make up my mind. It's one or the other. It's either faked for attention or whatever reason, or it is genuine.
Well, when it first came out, I was quite taken with it, and I thought, perhaps this is the mystery solved. I don't think that now. I know people have said it's a modern forgery. Other people have claimed it's a forgery from the 20s. Which would be very interesting if it was, because there's information in there that wouldn't have been known in the 20s. And there's these different camps that, it's modern ink. No, it isn't. I mean, I don't have a problem with the fact that it was in an old photo album, because, he might have used the photo album, cut out the pages with pictures of, his wife and that, because he hated her.
Flory.
Yeah. I wouldn't like to say. I don't think Maybrick was Jack the Ripper. I did think that. I mean, I'll actually give you a bit of an exclusive now. I'm working on a documentary about Jack the Ripper with Jason Figgis and Mike Hawley, and I've written actually episode 1. We've got to edit it down because it's probably going to be a 90-minute film. But there's a chap called Francis Tumblety.
Yeah.
Very strong suspect. In fact, Stuart Evans found a letter that had been written by a little child who was connected with the Ripper case. And he said that he was a very strong suspect. And Tumblety had actually been arrested on suspicion of being Jack the Ripper. Now, he jumped bail, went back to America, and Scotland Yard actually sent someone over to basically track him down, to sort of shadow him. Now, you're going to say, well, why wasn't he brought back to the UK? Why was he extradited? There wasn't enough evidence to basically charge him. But, there's strong evidence linking him to other murders. I can't say too much, but shall we say that in America, well, I can say a little bit because the book's come out now, and it's, the third one that Mike Hawley's done on it. Let's just say that everywhere Tumblety seemed to go, there was murders of women.
Yeah.
Now, it was total coincidence, he was very unlucky, or there was more to it. Now, he hated women with a passion, hated prostitutes, had a collection of women's wombs, and used to carry around surgical knives. And his appearance matches, for instance, there was a chap called Hutchinson.
He was one of the best witnesses, actually. He stood outside Mary Jane Kelly's
Court.
Yeah, that's right.
Mary Kelly.
He was there. He claimed he was there for about an hour and a half or so, wasn't he? And they said, well, why were you so interested? And he said, because, this guy looked out of place that was talking to Mary before he went down into Miller's Court. Was it like a quart of beer or something?
It was like a little courtyard, and she had one small room. And the description that he gives, and you can Google it and look it up, it's very matches Tumblety's description. Now, the reason why he was hanging around is because he probably fancied Mary Kelly, was hoping to get shall we say, perhaps a night with her for nothing.
Yeah.
The other theory, and there's a book that was actually done, I can't remember the name of it, I think it was called From Hell, From Hell, that Hutchinson was the Ripper, and he realised, because someone else had seen him waiting outside Miller's Court, it was a woman had seen him. So the other theory is he thought, God, I've been seen, I'm Jack the Ripper, so I've got to make up this description of someone else to get out of it. I know, again, people say, well, it's very detailed, this description is at night, and but again, he could have had a photographic memory, perhaps he exaggerated stuff. But the person that he's claimed to have seen doesn't sound like Tumblety, but we'll never know for certain. I can't say Francis Tumblety is Jack the Ripper, but there's a lot of evidence linking him with a case, and the fact that Scotland Yard arrested him on suspicion of being a murderer. I've
seen him come up in discussion quite a few times in various books throughout the years and documentaries, so he's been on my radar anyway, as Aaron Kosminski seems to come up all the time as well.
Oh, yes, the Polish chap,
the barber who he didn't cut anyone's throats when he was working, but in his spare time, well...
Yeah, it's a fascinating case, and again, my mum got me into that. Weirdly enough, you think your mum, but she had a book on Jack the Ripper by a chap called Donald Rumbelow, which is generally regarded as one of the best books on Jack, and is a great introduction to it. I think it's still in print, and it's gone through various editions. But I got hooked on that because, again, I love a mystery, but we'll never know for sure. I mean, there's a lot of weird theories out there. It was the Duke of Clarence, it was the Masons, it was Lewis Carroll.
Joe Barnett.
It was Edward VII.
Yeah. Joe Barnett, Mary's ex-boyfriend, was a suspect as well, I believe.
Yeah.
So going back to the ghosts, what are people seeing? Is it the victims' ghosts that people are seeing?